So the notion of history is deeply embedded in the work of Allora and Calzadilla. You have this tree that actually is an element of history, or the sculpture which is next to me, which is actually a dinosaur, a real dinosaur bone sitting on almost this device of power, this pupitre that you can use to make speeches, as if we were trying to figure out what would this bone say if this bone could talk and share its own history. Of course, their work doesn't only focus on this deep archaeological history. The history of Puerto Rico, where they come from, where they live, is at the center of their work, and it's also connected to their location in Puerto Rico. The history of decolonization, of post-colonial era, is also part of their work. You can see that in this exhibition with more specifically two works. One is called Penumbra, and it's a film that you see appearing here and there in the entire exhibition, on the entire wall of the exhibition, from the first room to the last room, which is a film of a foliage, the foliage of a forest in Martinique, in the Absalon Valley, a forest where the philosopher Aimé Césaire, together with many artists, during the mid-20th century, during the Second World War, would gather and reflect on the state of the world and imagine a world, a better world, a different world after the war or after colonization. The piece that you see also on the floor, all over the exhibition, on the floor and outside, which is also one of the connecting tissue of this exhibition, this piece called Graft, is these flowers on the floor, as if the windows of the museum would have, been cracked open, and the wind would have blown in all these flowers all over the museum. And they're here on the floor, like the tree. There is also this notion almost of a fall. Something has fallen in this exhibition. I think the question for the visitor to answer for themselves is what has fallen. This notion of a fall is actually central to their work. These flowers here also come from Martinique, come from the same region than the foliage of Penumbra. So you're here once again in a landscape, but a landscape like is not any landscape. The landscape that surrounded the tree next to me, the landscape of Graft, the landscape of Penumbra, are landscapes that carry meaning, that carry historical meaning. And that's almost where the work starts. I think that some of the earliest work in the exhibition, two films that are located almost as running through the exhibition at the very beginning of the exhibition and at the end of the exhibition. One is called Returning the Sound, and the other one is called Under Discussion. And they are works that the artists have done, films that the artists have done in Puerto Rico with friends, and friends that were activists involved in movement and moments of protest, questioning the presence of the American army testing weapons, chemical weapons, on the island and polluting, destroying little by little the island. And for years, on a very specific island in Puerto Rico named Vieques, where actually the army was located, a group of activists, of protesters, and the artists were part of this group, were there trying to raise awareness to what was happening. There is also a series of photos which are actually both tongue-in-cheek, a little bit funny and ironic. It's a protest sneakers, if you want. They work on sneakers, on the sole of sneakers, written political slogan on the sole of the sneakers in such a way that when you walk on the beach, you leave actually political message for passerby to read. So their work, I think if we try to define their work, I think the word whistleblower can come to mind. That's what they do. They they succeed actually to identify, to create forms, context, images, moving images, sounds that actually tell us our history and the relationship of our history with our broader environment. And it's not an history which is, now that the word Anthropocene, the awareness of the environmental crisis is on everybody's lip, we have to remember that Allora Calzadilla started that now almost 30 years ago to put their finger on this growing crisis around us and how history, the history also of catastrophe, because when the tree that revealed the last coquille fell, that was a natural catastrophe, a hurricane, something happened. You have one of the first gallery when you enter, this work called Blackout, which is an exploded electrical transformer. And when this transformer exploded, again during a hurricane in Puerto Rico, the entire island was projected in darkness, like the word penumbra that we have for the movie running around all the gallery. So their work is about, in a way, they take us to the heart, a certain heart of darkness. There's also a lot of humor in the work. They are whistleblower, but they are whistleblower also with a smile, and at times a whistleblower that can also show our own, expose our own contradiction. If I look at, for instance, this work called Graft, these flowers on the floor, of course they talk about the environment, they talk about the passage of time, they talk about history, the history and the philosophical context around Aimé Césaire. But for a work, a sculpture, a scattered sculpture which is about the environment, they are made out of plastic. One could see a contradiction in this idea that a work talking about the environment, reflecting on the environment in a critical way, is made out of plastic. Indeed, these flowers are made in China, but they are made with recycled plastic. So these flowers that are either growing or dying around us also are the fruit. They coming out of the trash of destruction that we leave behind us when we abuse the planet with an inflation of plastic that will never, as we know now, never disappear. I mentioned whistleblower because it is also the first work that people see in the exhibition with this monument or this anti-monument titled Hope Hippo. When you enter the museum, you see this sculpture, which is an hippopotamus, just out of the mud, covered in mud, in a pool of newspaper on the floor, as if the newspaper, the news, the history of our present was this sticky and stinking mud that the hippo was extracting itself from. On the top of the hippo, you have a character, you have a person, a reader, and this person reads the newspaper, and that the newspaper you see on the floor around the sculpture. And when this person reads an article that can smell, I would say smell a rat, or smell a compromise, smell, have might suggest a feeling of or facts of corruption, this person blows a whistle from the top of his or her lungs. And for me, it's really important to start the exhibition this way because in a way it gives you the flavor of what this exhibition will be. You start with a whistleblower that is actually speaking truth to power. And that's really the core of what Allora and Calzadilla are doing.